Most people think disrespect happens because they're too nice. It doesn't. Some of the most respected people in the world are incredibly kind. They're generous. They listen. They help people. And yet, nobody talks over them. Nobody dismisses them. Nobody treats them like an afterthought. Then there are people who try to be tough. They raise their voices. They act dominant. They demand respect everywhere they go. And strangely, they're often the ones getting ignored, challenged, or secretly mocked. So what creates respect? The answer is hidden in something most people never pay attention to. Respect is not an emotion. It's a prediction. Every person you meet is constantly making tiny predictions about you. How will you react under pressure? What happens if someone interrupts you? What happens if somebody says no to you? Will you stand your ground? Will you apologize for existing? Will you abandon your own boundaries just to avoid discomfort? People aren't studying your words nearly as much as they're studying your reactions. And those reactions create your social value. The moment someone believes they can ignore your boundaries without consequences, your value drops. The moment someone believes your approval is easy to get, your value drops. The moment someone believes you'll tolerate almost anything just to keep the peace, your value drops. Not because people are cruel, because human beings instinctively organize themselves according to strength, certainty, and predictability. Think about every highly respected person you've ever known. They don't chase attention. They don't beg to be included. They don't explain themselves endlessly. They don't panic when someone disagrees with them. They project something much more powerful. They project certainty, and certainty changes everything. There is a strange psychological principle that appears in almost every social interaction. People trust people who trust themselves. That sounds simple, but it's one of the most important truths you'll ever understand. If you constantly second-guess yourself, other people begin second-guessing you. If you treat your opinions like they need permission to exist, others start treating them the same way. If every sentence ends like a question, people unconsciously rank you lower. Your mind is broadcasting information long before you ever speak, and everyone around you is picking it up. Imagine walking into a room. Two people are standing there. One person is speaking quickly, fidgeting, checking reactions, laughing nervously, and trying desperately to be liked. The second person speaks calmly. They take pauses. They don't rush. They don't fill every silence. When they finish speaking, they seem perfectly comfortable with whatever happens next. Who seems more powerful? Who seems more trustworthy? Who appears to deserve more respect? Most people answer the same way. The calm person. Not because they're louder. Not because they're smarter. Because calmness communicates something powerful. It says, I don't need immediate approval. And that's rare. Humans pay attention to rare things. Desperation is common. Neediness is common. Approval seeking is common. Calm certainty is uncommon. And uncommon things carry value. This is why one of the fastest ways to gain respect is to stop trying so hard to get it. That sounds backward, but social psychology is filled with paradoxes. The more desperately you chase respect, the more you communicate that you don't already possess it. The more you chase validation, the more you signal that validation is scarce in your life. People don't respond to your intentions. They respond to your signals. And signals happen automatically. You can say, I'm confident. But if your behavior says, please approve of me, people believe the behavior. You can say, I'm important. But if you tolerate constant disrespect, people believe your tolerance. Your actions are your autobiography. Every reaction teaches people how to treat you. Think about that for a second. Every reaction is training. Someone interrupts you. You laugh and let it happen. Training. Someone cancels on you repeatedly. You immediately rearrange your schedule. Training. Someone insults you as a joke. You smile even though it bothers you. Training. People are learning where your boundaries are. And more importantly, they're learning whether those boundaries are real. A boundary that never gets enforced isn't a boundary. It's a wish. Respect begins where clear boundaries begin. But here's the mistake most people make. They think boundaries require aggression. They don't. The strongest boundaries are often the quietest. Someone speaks to you disrespectfully. You pause. You look at them. You calmly say, I don't appreciate being spoken to like that. That's it. No explosion. No anger. No speech. No emotional chaos. Just clarity. Clarity is powerful because people expect emotional reactions. They're prepared for yelling. They're prepared for arguments. They're prepared for drama. What they're often not prepared for is calm certainty. Calm certainty forces people to reevaluate you. It interrupts their predictions. Remember that word, predictions. Respect is based on predictions. If someone predicts that you'll stay silent no matter what they do, they'll continue. If someone predicts you'll respectfully enforce your standards, they adjust. Human beings adapt very quickly. The problem is that many people accidentally train others to disrespect them. They answer every message immediately. They apologize constantly. They say yes to everything. They over-explain every decision. They seek permission for their own preferences. And eventually, people begin treating them accordingly. Not because they're bad people, because behavior creates expectations. The good news is that expectations can change very quickly, sometimes in a single conversation. Imagine this. You're speaking and someone cuts you off. Instead of stopping, you continue your sentence calmly. Not louder, not angrily, you simply finish. Something interesting happens. The interruption loses power, because you refuse to surrender your space. Tiny moments like this change social dynamics dramatically. Respect isn't usually won through grand gestures. It's won through small moments repeated consistently. Tiny moments, tiny decisions, tiny acts of self-respect. You say what you mean. You keep your word. You don't laugh at insults that hurt you. You don't agree with things you disagree with. You don't abandon your values to fit in. Over time, people begin making a new prediction. This person has standards. This person knows who they are. This person cannot be pushed around easily. And suddenly the treatment changes. Not because you demanded it, because you became different. One of the biggest reasons people lose respect is because they're afraid of tension. They fear awkwardness. They fear disappointing people. They fear being disliked. And because of that fear, they sacrifice themselves constantly. But every time you abandon yourself to avoid discomfort, you pay a hidden price. Your self-respect decreases, and people can feel it. There is something almost impossible to fake. Self-respect. It changes your posture, your eye contact, your voice, your decisions, the energy you bring into a room. People often ask why certain individuals command respect immediately. It's rarely because of physical appearance. It's because they seem comfortable with themselves. They seem willing to lose approval. And willingness changes status. The person who is willing to walk away from disrespect has power. The person who will tolerate anything has very little. This doesn't mean becoming cold. It doesn't mean becoming arrogant. It means understanding a simple truth. You teach people how to treat you by what you repeatedly allow. If someone consistently crosses your boundaries and nothing happens, they learn something. If someone repeatedly disrespects you, and you remain available exactly as before, they learn something. Behavior rewarded gets repeated. This principle works in friendships, relationships, workplaces, families, everywhere. You don't need manipulation. You need consistency. One of the most respected traits in human psychology is congruence. Congruence means your words and actions match. You say you value honesty. You tell the truth. You say you need respect. You enforce respectful behavior. You say your time matters. You protect it. Congruent people feel powerful because they are predictable in the best possible way. People know where they stand. People trust them, and trust creates respect. Incongruent people create confusion. They say one thing and do another. They claim confidence while apologizing for everything. They claim standards while accepting anything. Eventually, people stop taking them seriously, because inconsistency weakens authority. Imagine someone who says, "Please don't speak to me that way," then immediately laughs and continues the conversation. The message becomes blurry, and blurry boundaries invite testing. Clear boundaries invite respect. Here's another truth that changes social interactions forever. Silence is power. Most people are terrified of silence. They rush to fill it. They explain. They justify. They ramble. But silence creates gravity. When someone asks you a difficult question, pause. When someone makes an unreasonable demand, pause. When someone says something disrespectful, pause. The pause changes everything, because the pause communicates thoughtfulness. It communicates emotional control. It communicates that you don't react automatically. Emotionally reactive people are easy to control. Emotionally disciplined people are difficult to manipulate. And people instinctively respect what they cannot easily control. This is why composure is so powerful. Imagine two people facing criticism. The first person becomes defensive immediately. The second person listens, pauses, and calmly responds. Who appears stronger? The answer is obvious. Because emotional stability signals internal strength, and strength earns respect. Many people believe respect comes from having the perfect words. It doesn't. Words matter less than state. You can say the right thing with fear and lose influence. You can say something simple with certainty and gain influence. People feel your state. they respond to it constantly. If your body says, "I belong here," people tend to agree. If your behavior says, "I'm not sure I deserve space," people notice that too. Social status is often an invisible negotiation, and you're negotiating even when you're silent. The good news is that every interaction gives you another opportunity to change the negotiation. Every conversation, every meeting, every relationship, every day. Respect isn't reserved for a special group of people. It's often the natural consequence of self-respect expressed consistently. And once you understand that, something changes. You stop chasing respect. You start embodying the behaviors that naturally create it. And that's when other people begin seeing you differently. Most people never realize that the biggest battles for respect are not happening in dramatic confrontations. They're happening in ordinary moments. A friend makes a joke at your expense. A coworker takes credit for your idea. Someone keeps arriving late because they assume you'll wait. A family member keeps giving you unwanted advice and expects you to obey. Tiny moments. Small moments. Moments that seem too insignificant to matter. But these moments are where your social identity gets built. Because every interaction leaves a trace. Every interaction teaches people something about what you expect and what you accept. There's a reason certain people seem to walk into a room and immediately command attention. They have developed an invisible reputation, not necessarily with the people in that room, but within themselves. They know who they are, and when you know who you are, your behavior changes. You stop negotiating your own worth. You stop acting as though your opinions need approval. You stop shrinking yourself to make other people comfortable. And strangely, the moment you stop trying to earn permission to exist, people start respecting you more. Human beings are constantly asking one unconscious question. How does this person see themselves? Because if you don't value yourself, people instinctively wonder why. If you apologize every 5 minutes, they wonder why. If you tolerate disrespect repeatedly, they wonder why. If you immediately surrender your opinions during disagreement, they wonder why. People may not consciously think these things, but they feel them, and feelings drive behavior. This is why self-respect is so contagious. If you genuinely believe your time matters, other people start treating your time differently. If you genuinely believe your boundaries matter, other people become more careful around those boundaries. Not always. There will always be people who push. There will always be people who test. But tests are not a problem. Tests are opportunities. Because every test gives you a chance to define yourself. Imagine someone interrupts you repeatedly. Most people have one of two reactions. They either stay silent or they become angry. Both reactions often fail. Silence communicates surrender. Anger communicates loss of control. But there is another option. You calmly say, "I wasn't finished." Simple. Direct. No hostility. No apology. No emotional charge. Just clarity. And clarity is magnetic. Because most people live in confusion. They say yes when they mean no. They laugh when they're hurt. They agree when they disagree. They pretend when they should be honest. So when someone communicates clearly, it stands out immediately. People trust clarity. People respect clarity. And people remember clarity. One of the most powerful things you can learn is the difference between being nice and being agreeable. Nice people can have boundaries. Nice people can say no. Nice people can disagree. Agreeable people often struggle with those things. They fear conflict. They fear rejection. They fear disappointing others. And because of that, they give away pieces of themselves, little by little, until one day they feel invisible. You know the feeling. You've been there before. You help everyone, but nobody seems to appreciate it. You always make yourself available, but nobody respects your time. You support everyone, but when you need support, people disappear. That feeling doesn't happen by accident. It often happens because you've trained people to expect endless access to you. Unlimited availability creates low value. This principle exists everywhere. Things that are scarce become valuable. Things that are unlimited become ordinary. Your attention is valuable. Your time is valuable. Your energy is valuable. But if you give those things away without standards, people unconsciously stop appreciating them. This doesn't mean becoming selfish. It means becoming intentional. You are allowed to protect your energy. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to disappoint people. Read that again. You are allowed to disappoint people. Because one of the fastest ways to lose respect is to become addicted to being liked. When being liked becomes your highest priority, you become easy to control. Anyone can influence you with approval. Anyone can manipulate you with guilt. Anyone can pressure you with the fear of rejection. But the moment you're willing to be misunderstood, something changes. You become free. Freedom is attractive. People respect people who seem free. People respect people who can say, I understand you disagree. I hear your opinion, but this is still my decision. That kind of certainty is rare, and rarity creates value. There is another behavior that destroys respect faster than almost anything else. Over-explaining. Think about how often people justify themselves. They explain every decision. They defend every preference. They provide 10 reasons for every boundary. Why? Because they're afraid their answer won't be accepted. But every unnecessary explanation can accidentally communicate uncertainty. Imagine someone says, I can't make it tonight, and they stop there. Simple, confident, clear. Now imagine someone says, I'm so sorry. I know I said I might come. It's just that I had a really long day, and then I needed to do a few things, and maybe tomorrow I can. Explain more. Which person seems more certain? Which person seems more comfortable with their decision? Confidence often sounds shorter. It doesn't mean being rude. It means understanding that your decisions don't always require a courtroom defense. You are allowed to make choices. You are allowed to have preferences. You are allowed to set limits, without guilt, without endless explanations, without seeking permission. There is a hidden rule in social psychology. The person who appears least desperate for approval often gains the most influence, not because they play games, not because they manipulate, because independence creates respect. People trust those who can stand on their own. This is why emotional neediness often creates the opposite of what people want. The more desperately someone wants acceptance, the more pressure others feel around them. Pressure creates discomfort. Discomfort creates distance. And distance creates insecurity. Then the cycle repeats. But emotionally secure people are different. They enjoy connection. They appreciate friendship. They value relationships. Yet they don't need constant reassurance to feel okay. That stability feels powerful, because emotional stability communicates abundance. It says, I value you, but I won't collapse without your approval. And that message changes everything. One of the easiest ways to become instantly more respected is to become less reactive. The world is filled with people who react to everything. Every criticism, every opinion, every disagreement, every comment online. Everything becomes an emergency. Everything becomes personal. Everything demands a response. But highly respected people understand something important. Not everything deserves their energy. Sometimes the strongest response is no response. Sometimes the strongest response is a smile. Sometimes the strongest response is walking away. Self-control creates mystery. Mystery creates authority. Because people can't easily predict emotionally disciplined individuals. And unpredictability commands attention. Think about the person who never seems shaken. Someone insults them. They remain calm. Someone disagrees with them. They remain calm. Someone challenges them. They remain calm. People begin asking themselves a question. What does this person know that I don't? Composure creates perceived strength. Because in nature, panic is associated with weakness. Calmness is associated with confidence. This is why your breathing matters. Your posture matters. Your pace of speech matters. Your movements matter. Your body is constantly telling a story, and other people are listening. Imagine two people entering a meeting. One person rushes in, apologizing, moving quickly, looking nervous. The other walks in calmly. They make eye contact. They take their seat without hurry. Who seems more authoritative? The answer has very little to do with intelligence. It's about signals. Humans are experts at reading signals. Thousands of years of evolution trained us to do exactly that. We assess confidence. We assess certainty. We assess emotional control, usually in seconds. And then we create expectations. Remember this because it's crucial. People rarely rise above the expectations they have of you. If they expect you to fold under pressure, they pressure you. If they expect you to stay silent, they speak over you. If they expect you to tolerate disrespect, they continue. Change the expectation and you change the relationship, sometimes instantly. You don't need to become a different person. You simply need to become more consistent. Say what you mean what you say, follow through, keep your word, protect your boundaries, speak clearly, and perhaps most importantly, become comfortable with silence. Silence is uncomfortable for many people. That discomfort creates opportunities. Imagine negotiating something. You state your position, then you stop talking. The other person becomes uncomfortable. They start filling the silence. They explain. They negotiate. They reveal information. Silence has power because most people can't tolerate it. Calm people can. This is also true during conflict. Someone says something disrespectful. Instead of immediately defending yourself, you pause. You look at them. You let the silence exist. That silence forces awareness. It changes the emotional atmosphere. And suddenly your words carry more weight, because words become more powerful when they're not chasing attention. The same principle applies to your presence. People who desperately seek attention often receive very little respect. People who are comfortable simply being present often receive more, because attention and respect are not the same thing. Many people have attention. Few people have respect. Attention can be loud. Respect is often quiet. Respect shows up in different ways. People listen when you speak. People remember what you say. People take your opinions seriously. People become more careful about wasting your time. People assume your choices have reasons behind them. That is respect. And it begins long before anyone gives it to you. It begins with the standards you set for yourself. If you constantly break promises to yourself, your confidence decreases. If you constantly ignore your own boundaries, your self-trust decreases. If you constantly betray your values to fit in, your self-respect decreases. And when self-respect decreases, other forms of respect become difficult to maintain. Because confidence isn't built by positive thinking. It's built by evidence. You tell yourself you'll wake up early, and you do. Evidence. You say you'll finish something, and you do. Evidence. You say you won't tolerate certain behavior, and you don't. Evidence. Every promise kept to yourself becomes proof that your words matter. Eventually your mind begins believing you. That belief changes how you walk, how you speak, how you make decisions, how you handle pressure, and people notice. Always. There is a phrase that explains nearly every social interaction. People believe what you repeatedly demonstrate, not what you occasionally say. Repeatedly demonstrate. That's the key. One confident moment means very little. One strong boundary means very little. Consistency changes identities. Consistency changes reputations. Consistency changes relationships. The person who respects themselves once in a while gets inconsistent results. The person who respects themselves consistently becomes impossible to ignore. And that's when something fascinating happens. You stop wondering whether people respect you because your focus changes. You start asking a different question. Am I respecting myself right now? That question changes everything, because every answer shapes the way the world sees you. And eventually, the respect you were chasing begins showing up naturally. Not because you demanded it, not because you forced it, but because your behavior finally gave people a new prediction, a new expectation, a new story about who you are. And people almost always treat you according to the story you consistently tell them.